Kia ora, good evening. Road safety agencies are putting the brakes on speeding and dangerous drivers this summer with the launch of a summer road safety campaign. From now until the end of January, police will be enforcing a reduced speed threshold of 4 kilometres per hour with no tolerance for those flouting the law. Police say there will also be continued focus on drink driving, restraints and other unsafe behaviour. Southerners can expect to see an increased police presence over the next few months, especially on highways and rural roads, according to Jeff Southland of the Invercargill Police. The acting senior sergeant says although nationally fatal crash numbers are lowering, the serious injury crash rates are too high, and says a concentrated effort over the holiday period will reduce risk levels. The Art for Animals auction set to be held this Saturday night at Invercargill's airport has been postponed by organisers. Organisers claim a lack of ticket sales due to pressing social commitments at this time of year is the reason behind the postponement. The 50-odd pieces donated by artists to raise funds for the SPCA rebuild will be put aside until next year, when organisers hope to run the auction at a more commercially viable time. It's been 100 years since the Antarctic explorer Australian Douglas Mawson embarked on his epic voyage into Antarctic waters to discover the secrets of the frozen continent. 100 years later, and a team of paying passengers and staff from the University of New South Wales are replicating Mawson's epic journey. The team hoped to compare scientific conclusions drawn from Mawson's expedition in 1913 with those collected in the coming weeks. Before the expedition departed Bluff this afternoon, Hunter Andrews asked its leader, Professor Chris Turney, about Mawson and his expectations for the coming weeks in the sub-Antarctic.
Mawson was one of the contemporaries of Scott and Shackleton, and it's just your boy's own adventures. This was a young man of 28 leading an expedition down to Antarctica, worth the equivalent of 25 million US today, and he took a large scientific team, the largest one down to date, and they just wanted to discover what lay south of Australia and New Zealand. No one knew what was down there. It was sort of the Edwardian equivalent of space travel. There was just a few bits of known coastline, and what lay beyond was anyone's guess. So he took this team down and they did this huge amount of observations for a couple of years. Originally they were only meant to go for a year, but because Mawson lost 2 of his men on his sledging journey under tragic circumstances, they stayed for an extra year. So they had this huge wealth of data, and when it was all written up, it fills a complete bookshelf.
How important is his legacy to you and what you're doing now?
I think he's an inspiration. He really is. He went ahead, way ahead of what other people were doing. He wasn't going for geographical records. He was actually trying to better understand what that part of the world meant for our planet. In fact, he described the world as a jigsaw puzzle, and Antarctica was the last big piece missing.
Okay, let's move on to 2013. What are you up to? You're breaking this journey into 2 stages?
That's right, it's 2 legs, 6 weeks in total. The first leg is going through the sub-Antarctic islands, where some of the expedition went 100 years ago, but the main focus, the second leg, will be via Macquarie Island at 54 degrees south, and we're going to try and get into Commonwealth Bay, which at the moment is clogged in sea ice. So it looks like we'll have to travel over about 60 kilometres of sea ice to get into the huts. So we're not quite sure if we're going to make it.
You mentioned Macquarie Island. That has a Mawson connection, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah. So Mawson's original expedition, he left a team there. So he had 3 bases strung out across the region, at Macquarie Island, Commonwealth Bay, and another one, what we now know as the Shackleton Ice Shelf. And Macquarie Island particularly was important. Not only were they doing science, but it was a relay station. So that expedition for the first time was sending messages and weather observations back home, which immediately improved the forecast across the region.
What do you hope to attain scientifically from these voyages?
Well, that original expedition generated a vast amount of data, and that gives you a baseline of what conditions were like a century ago. So we're going to be using some of the same sort of technologies and measurements that they did 100 years ago, but with a modern twist. So we're going to try and see how much change has happened 100 years ago. But I think almost equally importantly, because Mawson's original expedition wasn't government funded, there was a little bit of funds from that, a lot of it was private, and so we had to engage the public, had to get them excited, And to do that, he used a variety of technologies, the first plane, the first wireless, well, the plane crashed, the pilot was drunk, that's another story. And we're going to be using drones for mapping instead. We've got our own ship, the Schakowsky here. And we're going to be trying to engage the public as much as possible, using a whole range of social media, including Twitter, Google+, blogs, but we're also going to be using Hangouts on Air, which are on Google+. So if anyone's out there who's got a Google+ account, you can go on the spiritofmawson.com website. We've got 9 events going out across the islands, and we're going to be broadcasting live, and we're going to be able to not just show you what we're seeing, but actually answer people's questions as well.
What are you looking for? Changes, potential changes in the climate, or humans in the last 100 years, what the influence has been?
Yes, a combination of those sort of things. The last 30 years or so, we know the southern hemisphere westerly winds, which we're also familiar with, have been pushing polewards. And there's been a variety of reasons for that one, mostly to do with the ozone hole depletion, but of course the ozone hole's now repairing itself. Sadly, we've put ever more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and so the effect is continuing. Instead of returning back north, the winds are continuing south. And that's having all sorts of knock-on effects with climate, ocean circulation, and the regional biology. And so we're going there to look under, across and above the surface, just to see what sort of impacts have been.
Results of the second Youth Town Voice of New Zealand survey have been released. The survey aims to give young people aged 13 to 18 a voice on the things that matter most to them. Almost 1,200 young people took part in the survey, with 63% being female. The survey found 9 out of 10 felt they had at least one friend or adult who cares about them, but 1 in 6 felt they had no one to talk to when having a hard time. When it comes to being social, young people prefer to socialise at home, either their own or friends. Nearly 9 out of 10 have a Facebook account, while almost a quarter use Twitter, and a third rate social networking as very important to them. Parents have the most influence over young people's lives, while 4 in 10 look up to someone well-known or famous. Over 3/4 rate their happiness as 6 or more on a 10-point scale. As far as keeping active goes, 6 out of 10 belong to at least one sports club or team, and a third would like to do more sport, music or other activities. And when it comes to employment, 3/4 say they're concerned about getting a job, while half have a career plan and half don't. Will they stay here? 13% say they definitely see a future in New Zealand, while 10% say they see no future for themselves here. Finally, young people rate their biggest challenge as educational achievement, while for family, neighbourhood and community, they see it as money and finances. They rate New Zealand's biggest challenge as money and economy, while war and violence rates as the biggest challenge for the world. Stay with us after the break. Vibrant Invercargill's City Centre manager calls for the consultative process on the inner city upgrade to be reopened. Welcome back. Invercargill's swimming pool, Splash Palace, was closed yesterday after a blocked drain leaked sewage. Several hundred children were unable to attend club swim meets, swimming lessons or canoe polo yesterday due to the pool's closure around 1:30. Several blocked toilets in the women's changing rooms alerted staff to the issue, which was traced to a broken sewer pipe located under the building. The City Council's Environmental and Health team assessed the building and ordered a full decontamination, including water tests from all pools, which were cleared of any contamination early this morning. A specialist clean, which included a complete sterilisation, took place throughout the building last night, with the pool reopening this morning. Once again this year, Mayor Tim Shadbolt was called upon to officiate over the presentation of New Zealand citizenship certificates. What was once a rare event has now become almost commonplace as the city gains an international reputation as a great place to live and work. This morning, 21 new citizens took either an oath or affirmation of commitment to their new country, New Zealand. Nationalities of origin represented were American, Samoan, South African, Indian, Romanian, British, Russian, Sri Lankan and Australian. Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt says it's always a great pleasure to preside over the granting of citizenships to New Southlanders and welcomes the contribution they make to the city and region. Vibrant Invercargill Town Centre Manager Joan Scarlett is not surprised by the results of last week's foot traffic survey that indicate the ongoing decline in foot traffic around the city centre. Ms Scarlett is urging the City Council to return to a consultative process on the proposed master plan for the inner city upgrade, as many voters had indicated at last month's election that they felt under-consulted.
There needs to be more community consultation, particularly on the final master plan. That's what they haven't seen, and that's what they're looking forward to have a look at. And they need to be told to understand it. And if the community doesn't want it, I think it's got to be readdressed again, and just pick out the parts that probably annoys them. It's the people that actually use the CBD, so we've got to take notice of them. We've got to get that buy-in.
Do you agree, though, that something has to be done in the inner city, and as soon as possible? Can we afford to go through another couple of years of consultation and that sort of thing? Maybe that would be too late?
No, I don't think so. If it does take a couple of years, if you get it right, I think it's worth those 2 years, because it will pick up. If you just look back at the last upgrade, and it was diabolical. As far as the people in the CBD, it was really, really bad. And after the upgrade did happen, and it took some time because that was a big upgrade, people did come back to the CBD. But we've got to turn it into more of an entertainment area, and so it's not just retail.
Is that something we forget with these foot traffic surveys, of course, are conducted during the day, but at night, if you come down here on a Friday evening, Don Street is very much alive with those entertainment venues. It's certainly not dead in the evening, is it?
That, you're probably right, but there's only one type of entertainment. We'd like to see a greater spread, involving the whole community, not just one sector in the community, because I have a feeling it's probably the younger age group. How
much is that earthquake, or the need to earthquake-proof shore-up buildings, having an impact on the inner city? I noticed not the only reason why ASB may be leaving S Street, but they are going, aren't they, to a structurally sound another building further away?
Yes, there's probably more reasons than just the property next door they talk about, because I'm not too sure what the strength of the Southland Harms is either. So there's probably other reasons why they're leaving. And one example would be car parking. We can expect that earthquake issue to become more prevalent, though, can't we, in the coming years? Yes, because central government have told us so. And also not only that they set the guidelines, but in particular tenants, particularly the national organisations, they won't allow their staff to be in a property that's not up to what their standard is. There's one building at the moment with a national tenant in it. The building they're in actually comes in at 36%, which is above the guidelines, but it's not acceptable to that company. So we're going to get situations like that, and in fact it's not just the building code that's going to dictate what happens to the building, it's also to the tenants and the insurance companies and also to the banks.
Tomorrow's Bluff Hill climb signals the start of 4 days celebrating the achievements of Southland's much-loved son, Bert Munro. The competition starts tomorrow morning with the New Zealand Hill Climb Champs on Bluff Hill, followed by the New Zealand Supercross Champs in Winton in the evening. On Friday evening, weather permitting, Arete Beach hosts the New Zealand Beach Racing Champs with an alternate grass track on Bill Richardson Drive should the weather conditions be less than favourable for beach riding. On Saturday, sprint racing at Teretonga during the day is followed by motorcycle speedway in the evening. The Southland Toy Run and Wyndham Street Racing wrap up for a busy 4 days on Sunday. Stay with us for sport. Along next, we speak to former All White Ken Creswell about the state of New Zealand football. From the news team, good night.